Good evening. Welcome, everyone. I'm Bill Maley, your Brighton Town Supervisor. Welcome to tonight's April 10th, 2024 meeting of the Brighton Town Board. We will begin the open forum portion of our meeting shortly. The open forum is the portion of the meeting where members of the public have the opportunity to share their comments with the town board. Tonight, we've asked people to sign in to speak. So if you are going to want to address the board, if you're here in the room or in the downstairs overflow room, and you would like to address the board during the open forum, I would ask you to go to the table out in the front lobby now to sign in. I'll give more detailed instructions on the open forum once we get to that portion of the agenda. If you're watching us remotely on YouTube or our cable access channel, you'll have to log into Zoom if you want to speak during the open forum tonight. But if you are on Zoom, you will also have the opportunity to speak during the open forum. There are detailed instructions for logging into Zoom on the Town of Brighton webpage, in case we haven't all learned how to log into Zoom by now. But the Town of Brighton webpage is www.townofbrighton.org. We continue to make all of our town board meetings accessible to the deaf and hard of hearing community with our ASL interpreters, as is usually the case. Heather and Allie, thank you both so much for being here tonight. It means a lot to be able to communicate with the entire community through your interpretation. As a reminder, the agenda for tonight's meeting, as well as all the materials we're looking at in making our decisions, is available on the back table. It's also available on the town webpage. Before we get started with the meeting, though, I do want to take a quick point of personal privilege to wish my wife, Barbara, a happy anniversary. It's our 25th anniversary tonight. I couldn't do this without her, and I wouldn't want to try. So I will ask now that we all rise, if you're able to, and start the meeting with the pledge to the flag. I'll ask Councilmember Wilt to lead us.
Certainly, and I would also like to exercise a point of privilege and welcome home the 2nd Brigade Commando of the 10th Mountain Division, who have been deployed in the Middle East for the last 9 months and are finally home. We thank you for your service, and we are grateful that you are home safe. And I especially want to welcome home my son, my favorite officer in the brigade, First Lieutenant Benjamin Wilt.
Wonderful. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. What a great announcement. We have one proclamation tonight. I do want to say one thing. I will say this again during the open forum, but I want to say it now as well. For the sake of the people here in the room, we do not allow signs in our meetings, so please put your signs down. Thank you very much. Tonight's proclamation is Earth Day. Earth Day is April 22nd. And the celebration of Earth Day dates back to 1970, when millions of people, myself included, took to the streets to demonstrate for the Earth. Those demonstrations led to the broad recognition of the importance of environmental protection in the United States and around the world, which of course has only become more important as we see the impact of climate change on our way of life. Sustainability has been a core value in this administration. We continue to take action every day to make Brighton a more sustainable community. I think we're walking the talk here in Brighton. Of course, much of what we're doing is planned and thought out through the rubric of our Climate Action Plan, which the town board approved after a lot of work by our staff. The Climate Action Plan is designed to reduce carbon emissions here in the town of Brighton, not only by town government, but also by the community as a whole. Earlier this year, the town of Brighton completed the conversion of the Carmen Clark Lodge in Town Park. It's ironic, it's our oldest Town Park Lodge, but now it's ahead of the curve. We installed a heat pump-based HVAC system. It was old, it needed an upgraded system. And that system, the old system, had no air conditioning capabilities. Now, if you rent that room in July, you can turn on the AC. But we also installed solar panels on the roof. Projects like that are important. Creating a net zero building is an example for other communities to follow, and we do have other similar projects planned. We also are well underway in planning a major renovation of Town Hall. That project is also driven by the need to replace the original HVAC system. This building is 71 years old, and so is the HVAC. Obviously, you know, we can all tell it's really tough to keep this building cool on hot days. So we've made a decision as part of that project to retrofit the building with a geothermal HVAC system. That will dramatically reduce emissions and further implement our climate action plan. Let me read that proclamation for Earth Day, April 22nd, 2024. On this day, whereas on this day in 1970, 20 million Americans, 10% of the US population at the time, took to the streets, college campuses, and hundreds of cities to protest environmental ignorance and demand a new way forward for our planet. And whereas the activism on what became known as the first Earth Day sparked the passage of the U.S. Clean Air, Clean Water, and Endangered Species Acts, and the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. And whereas the theme of this year's Earth Day is planet versus plastics, highlighting the fact that 380 million tons of plastic are now produced every year, while only 9% of plastic ever produced has been recycled. And whereas plastics have been proven to have adverse health effects, and a 60% reduction in plastic by 2040 would be a first step in creating a plastic-free environment. And whereas the town of Brighton is deeply committed to a healthy environment and pledges to continue implementation of our climate action plan and expanding our trail system to provide alternative modes of transportation. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, William W. Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor, acting on behalf of the members of our town council, do hereby declare April 22nd, 2024 as Earth Day in the town of Brighton, and ask that each of us embrace the power of our community, joining the more than 1 billion people in 192 countries around the world who will participate in Earth Day activities to help create a healthier planet. And this proclamation is signed by all 5 of us on the town board this 10th day of April 2024. We'll be displaying it out in the lobby. I also want to mention another proclamation. It's not one that I'm presenting or reading tonight, but I will be presenting it tomorrow at a ceremony honoring the 175th anniversary of the founding of the Friendly Home. It's quite remarkable that the Friendly Home has been serving the community for such a period of time, through generations of leadership and through generations of changes in the manner in which care is provided to senior members of our community. Congratulations to everyone associated with the Friendly Home. 175 years is an extraordinary milestone, and I'm looking forward to formally presenting that town proclamation at their ceremony tomorrow. Okay, we will now begin the open forum, which we hold at the beginning of every town board meeting. The open forum is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board concerning any matter relating to the town, whether or not it's an item on the agenda tonight. Tonight, we have asked people to sign in to speak during the open forum. I have the first group of names here, and we'll be getting to those in just a moment. But if you haven't had a chance to sign in and you want to speak, go out to the front desk. You can do that. Once I finish with everyone here in person, we will then go to people who are attending remotely to give them the opportunity to speak. If you're participating in the meeting remotely and you wish to speak during the open forum, you must first join the meeting on Zoom. As I mentioned before, there are detailed instructions for doing that on the town's webpage. You'll be unmuted by the host to speak if you use the raised hand function once we get to the remote speakers. I ask all speakers tonight during the open forum, whether you're speaking here in person or remotely, to please state your name and address. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. I will give you a 30-second warning before your time expires. We may not be able to answer the questions you may ask tonight, particularly if your question relates to a matter that's not on the agenda this evening. But our goal here tonight, and during the open forum we hold at every town board meeting, is to give you the opportunity to share your thoughts with the board and for us to be able to listen, and listen seriously to your words. Therefore, please direct your remarks to the town board and not to the room or to other speakers. Please refrain from personal attacks and from outbursts of any kind, including applause, boos, or similar disruptions, out of respect for the speakers and, frankly, out of respect for the time of everybody here tonight. Thank you for everybody who put down your signs. I appreciate that. We do not allow signs to be displayed during town board meetings. Persons who don't follow the rules during the open forum will be reminded. They may be directed to end their remarks. Repeated failure to follow the rules or follow other direction from the chair may result in being directed to leave the meeting or in an early termination of the town's open forum. So, I have a list, and I'm going to start with, it's going to be a little hard to read some of these, so I apologize. Sharon Shafrir, my apologies, thank you. And on deck is Al Cannell. Sharon, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Sharon Shafrir. I live on 2850 Elmwood Ave, and I've been in Brighton since 2010. My youngest will start attending TCMS as of this coming September. I'm very excited about that. A true democracy is measured not just by the election and voting rights that it offers to its citizens, but also by enabling individuals and communities to voice their concerns about their rights, policies, and legislation through rallies and protests. Free speech is essential to democracy, and in this democratic country, it is protected by law. Yet it is both constitutional and commonplace to place reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions on speech. This is done nearly in every aspect of public life in every jurisdiction in this country. Holding protests 3 times a week at peak end of school day hours of 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., only a few yards from here, at the busy 12 Corners Junction, which is congested with vehicles and pedestrian traffic, is putting TCMS and Brighton High School students at harm's way. Should any of the protest interaction will turn south and rhetoric will lead into violence. Protecting the safety of our students is a legitimate state interest, justifying reasonable rules around protests near schools. Making sure that rallies are not allowed near the school during and immediately after the school day is required to protect our children. What we are advocating does not violate the First Amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Al Cannell. Dimitri Shapiro is on deck after Mr. Cannell.
Al Cannell, 41 Esplanade. I graduated from Brighton in 1980. Lived in Brighton since my wife and I returned in 1992. Our kids graduated from Brighton in 2014. I spent significant time in and around all schools as a parent and as a coach of lacrosse, basketball, soccer, baseball. In that role, Brighton parents entrusted me to look after the safety of their kids, and I took that role very seriously. I've had a business in Brighton since 2009, including 4 years in 12 Corners. I live next to Council Rock School. The last time I requested something from the town board was on another child safety issue. Our twins were designated as walkers because of the distance from the school. When snow piled up, the town did not plow the sidewalks. Our kids had to walk in the street with cars, buses, and plows. It was unsafe. We requested the town plow the sidewalks. The town assessed the situation, determined that sidewalks should be plowed despite the fact that some residents opposed it. The action by the town board 20 years ago helped parents and children long after my kids left Council Rock and will help many in the future. I'm asking the board to do the same thing now, make a change to deal with a child safety situation that will help future generations. World events have resulted in protests in our town right next to the school, causing serious injuries. These are unsafe and bad for children attending the schools. I implore you to use your power to ensure child safety now by preventing anyone from conducting a protest on or near a school during the same day, recess, or school activities. For the following reasons: large gatherings are unsafe. Passionate protests can result in fights, riots, and shootings. Children in school today experience significant academic and social challenges and stress at home. Do we really want to pile on by adding geopolitical positions nearby? I think not, and I encourage you to do the same. It cannot be good for them and can cause harm. Your decisive action is needed now. We're living in a charged political climate with elections coming in November. Addressing the issue now and taking precautions can avoid future violence. I understand and appreciate the need to preserve free speech. Reasonable time, place, and manner applies. I encourage each of you as leaders of our community and the entire board to do the right thing now. Your action will persist beyond the geopolitical issue currently causing harm to adults and children in our town.
30 seconds.
A petition with nearly 1,500 signatures should help you demonstrate the courage and conviction to do the right thing now. Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, let me mention, if anybody has written remarks that they would like to have formally included in the record, they should feel free to give those to the town clerk, Dan Amon, right here. Dimitri Shapiro is our next speaker, followed by Elizabeth Zwas.
Hello, my name is Dimitri Shapiro, 132 Winter Greenway. I came to United States 32 years ago, seeking better and safer life, and I never regret about it. My children grew up here in Rochester. They went to public schools. They went to Temple Breed Kodesh, JCC, other places, and they never experienced any harassment or anti-Semitism, nothing. It was unlike me. They grew up in a safe environment. My older son family lives right here, right now, And my grandson is going to Council Rock in a few years, and I don't want him to experience any harassment as well. And that's why I'm here. And I want you to use your power to of course, to protect freedom of speech, but also freedom of speech ends when hate speech begins. And the latest protests that were in 12 Corners, especially the second one, and you can check with police, they were not safe. I think as protests were moving down, it was kind of heat level was raising up. And police asked me to stand behind, not to engage in any conversation, and they escorted us to our cars. We were basically part of counter-protest, me and my wife, and a few other people. So that's really what I want to say, and it's a very strong, very complex issues here, and it doesn't take much to ignite the whole situation. And I urge you to restrict those protests, move them away from school areas, or at least not to do them during school hours. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Elizabeth Zwas, and Dr. Agnes, is it Jonas, to follow.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Zwas. I reside at 234 Warren Avenue. I come to speak tonight wearing a number of hats. A community member of 24 years, an English teacher at 12 Corners Middle School since 2007, wife to my husband Michael, and mother to my 3 boys, all who presently attend Brighton Central Schools. When I was asked to speak tonight, I reflected on the day that an announcement was made over our TCMS PA system. Our principal calmly announced that there would be a planned demonstration and protest held at 12 Corners during dismissal time. She recommended that students should not engage with any of the protesters, but rather walk or ride home directly as quickly as possible. At the time, I had in front of me a number of 13 and 14-year-old students. In addition to these adolescent faces, my own 3 boys, who are around the same age, filled my mind. 2 of my 3 boys were hearing this very same announcement at the high school. I mention this so that you understand my seasoned experience with the mindset of this age group. The mood in the room quickly changed as my students rushed to the window to see if there was anything happening, as my classroom offers a decent view of 12 Corners. I looked at my students in front of me. They epitomize what Brighton stands for: diversity in all forms. My students, who come from various religious, ethnic, socioeconomic, mental, physical, and intellectual backgrounds, began asking me questions about the protest. Anxiety, unrest, and even anger replaced the quiet and calm from moments before. My students began devising plans of how they were going to get home, or even how they would still be able to get a quick snack at one of the various food establishments at 12 Corners, like they often do. Some wanted to call their parents. One student wanted to insert himself into the crowd and speak his mind. Another was worried that words and images might upset her as she attempted to walk past. To say that this was a disruption to education is an understatement. Educators like me are challenged even more today when it comes to distractions in the classroom. Adding this anxiety-filled event into the lives of my students pretty much ruined the academic tone that educators try so hard to achieve on a daily basis. There's certainly a time and place for free speech during rallies and protests, but it should not occur during the dismissal of our schools when our students are leaving for home. The very least our town can do is provide predictable safety. Students deserve their paths home to be without danger of stepping into oncoming traffic, harassment, coarse language, inappropriate imagery, and volatile gestures.
30 seconds.
I reserved time out of my lesson plan for students to process what they had seen, heard, and witnessed following the demonstration. I just hope that this type of instance does not have any negative long-term effects. Our students already have so much to deal with on a daily basis. Let us not give them any more. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Yeah. Dr. Agnes Jonas, and followed by Joanne Katzman.
I want to have this opportunity. Thank you. My name is Dr. Agnes Jonas. I'm a clinical psychologist, and in the last stage of my career, I specialize in trauma, and I do veteran and service member evaluations for compensation, and I want to thank your son for his service, Miss Will. Thank you. So I'm strictly here for the children of Brighton. And it does involve what everyone's talking about, the protesters on 12 Corners, who are across the street, as we know, from Brighton High School and middle school. At dismissal time, so imagine how well that was planned, they are exposing the children to images of, I believe, of dead children, of fake body parts with blood on them, and they're probably shouting out about murder of children and so forth. These exposures are likely to cause trauma to the children. Being exposed this way, the children may not even feel safe, as a previous person said, being in their own school. Because how do they escape? How do they leave? How does the school allow them to go through this? And why don't they protect them? While I don't want to shield the children from reality, I don't want them to be violated or aggressed upon by reality of what is going on elsewhere. Protesting truly can be a valuable way of making change. But this way of protesting in front of our children is traumatizing and harmful to them. Trauma and harm can last a lifetime, and I know that. Is that what we want of our children? This is what our children must be protected against, harm and traumatization. They are, after all, underage and cannot protect themselves. Children are not equipped to handle the traumatic images or objects or being accused of that their parents are murdering children. They can, as I said, they can develop traumatic stress, have nightmares, get anxious and depressed, and I know this from my professional experience, personal experience, which does last a lifetime without treatment and has been shown to have very negative effects on their lives. Again, is that what we want for our children? So it's not that I want to stop the protests. People have a right to protest, but not where children are harmed. Not in the way, yeah. And even our forefathers, if they knew children would be harmed by the First Amendment, you think they would write it? I can't say the right word.
30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. I'm almost done. So I'm asking that the protests be elsewhere, away from our schools. It is our responsibility as adults, as parents, to make sure our kids are safe. They are underage and should not be exposed to such horrors. Thank you for your understanding and this opportunity.
Thank you. Joanne Katzman, and then Louise McAdoo.
Hi, my name is Joanne Katzman. I live on 103 Terrytown Road. I've lived in Brighton since 2001. I'm a parent. I am a substitute teacher. I am a walker. I walk to and from TCMS and BHS, going to sub. In my time living in Brighton, walking around 12 Corners, I have seen numerous accidents. car accidents. I've seen, like, during the time going to the schools or going home, I've seen many instances of gridlock. Groups of students cross through the triangle to go to Starbucks or other businesses at 12 Corners Plaza, the bus stop, or to their homes at dismissal time. Protests at 12 Corners are distracting to drivers during a time when there is a lot of traffic. Some of the drivers going through 12 Corners at dismissal time are teen drivers who have not had their licenses for a long time and who can be distracted by protests. Our crossing guards already have the challenging task of keeping our children safe in the busy intersections. They should not have to worry about keeping pedestrians away from the protests or the added risk of distracted drivers. Protests attract people who feel passionate about issues. At protests, there is a potential for violence, which is what happened on February 16th. Our children should be able to walk home from school peacefully. They should be able to walk with their friends from 12 Corners Middle School to Starbucks or Scoop and Twist or wherever they want to go. They shouldn't have to worry about avoiding the protests. 12 Corners, or the triangle where the protest was or were, is right next to 12 Corners Middle School. There should be limits for when and where protests take place.
Thank you. Louise McAdoo is next, followed by Marilyn, it's hard to read the last name, okay. You know who you are. That's what matters. Go ahead,
Hello,
Louise.
everyone. I wanted to thank you. I'm Louise. I live in Brighton, Louise McAdoo, and I raised my family here. My daughter graduated with Nate from 12 Corners Middle School and high school, and it's just been a great experience for me. I'm really looking forward to my grandson being able to walk to school. We have a multi-generational family here in Brighton, and it's just been an amazing experience. And thanks to all of you. I really appreciate it. And I know your job is hard, and I know it's stressful, and I know it's really hard to make everybody happy all the time. I think that you have difficult jobs, and I can respect that. But I wanted to bring some information and share it with you, and I wanted to let you know that I moved here from San Diego with my family, and that we lived across the street from the synagogue shooting in Poway. Some of you may remember that. It was a serious incident, and one that we took in our community very, very seriously. And we lived in a leafy suburb with a beautiful school and people who were friends, and it was all happy and sweet. And a white supremacist walked to a synagogue with a machine gun, and everything changed like that. And I don't think anyone who lives in that community at that time will ever be the same after. And that is a school. We live in a world where people have school shootings on a regular basis. All the time these things happen. It's not even unusual anymore. And I wanted to share something specifically from the Atlantic with our town attorney, John. I know this is a tedious topic, Mr.
Mancuso.
Yes, thank you. I'm a retired teacher, so don't let me offend you. No. But I wanted to let you know that this is an edition of the Atlantic magazine that came out this week. Some of you may be familiar with the Atlantic. I love it, okay? And the subtitle is Anti-Semitism on the Right and the Left Threatens to End an Unprecedented Period of Tolerance and Safety and Prosperity for Jewish Americans and Demolish the Liberal Order they help establish. Okay, can we think about that? And this article, by the way, John, it also gives excellent resources on pro bono attorneys for people who don't understand that there's equal protection for all, including Jewish students trying to walk home from school. And this is very emotional for me, but we are counting on you. You are the adults. You are our town council. I voted for all of you. And nothing proper is happening. You can pass regulations on protests. We could have white supremacists over there in masks. I know, I have it on good authority that that's one of the reasons why the U of R shut it down, is because people were coming in with masks. They have no idea who they are. You don't know, Timothy McVeigh was from Lockport, John. Who is out here chanting about Jews? And ask yourself a rhetorical question.
30
Why
seconds.
are they coming to Brighton?
30 seconds.
Why? Why not Fairport? Why not Webster? Why are they here? Could it possibly be because this is the only school in Monroe County with Jewish students? And why did that shooter walk into that synagogue in Poway all those years ago? Was to kill Jews. And don't think he's the only one. And it's very naive of you to allow this to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken. Sorry.
Thank you.
Marilyn, and then followed by Helen Cashtan.
Good evening. My name is Marilyn Slentz, and I live on Route 31. My business in this area is a lot. I spend a lot of time here using your restaurants and so on and so forth, visiting friends, and my bank is over there. And when I was teaching at Nazareth, I would utilize a lot of the space. But one of the things I am on a regular basis is a driver who drives past the school, and we all have to obey the rules and so on and so forth. And it is a very congested area when students are getting out of school, and I love that the cross guards are so diligent and amazing and taking their own lives in their hands, actually. But I just wanted to point out that I think that if we look at the location, it clearly indicates that this is a targeted area and it's a targeted group. It's a premeditated area. They are harassing children. And as far as I'm concerned, children are not the ones responsible for the world the way it is and should not be targeted. They are being provoked into anger and fear. They are being harassed, intimidated, and it indicates that these people have made an effort and made a specific space where they knew this was going to create a problem, because parents may pull their children out of school. You guys are going to have to deal with the repercussions of that. Or, the fact that they're here at this spot next to a school at that time should really make people concerned. You guys, specifically, government officials, like Louise had mentioned, as far as the school shooting, should really be concerned about this. And one of the things is, when I thought was interesting when we came in here, William, say your last name?
Maley.
Maley. You had rules here. You said there would be no standing, and there'd be no blocking the door, and there would no blocking the interpreters, and then you wouldn't allow signs. And these are rules, and these are meant to keep order and to keep the place calm and to keep everything, copacetic. And then, if that's the case, then you can see how making rules that the school is not a place that we should target. There's plenty of other places, parks included, if they want, or even outside this building. I mean, there are places where they could go to get their voices heard.
30
It doesn't
seconds.
have to be in front of the school. And I think it's up to us as adults to keep our children safe. I really appreciated all that who spoke before and what they said, and every single thing went right to my heart, and I hope it's going to yours as well. This is a big issue, and it should be a very great concern, because our children are the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Helen, and then Eli Futterman.
Hi, I'm Helen Cashton. I live at 149 Lackeen Drive. I prepared notes before I left to come here, and as I was driving, several thoughts came through my mind. We are told how close we can park to a fire hydrant. Registered sex offenders have a distance as to how close they can get to a school. We must move over for stopped vehicles on a roadside. Those are safety things. We have limits and requirements by our government and that affect our lives on a daily basis. I'm asking the town of Brighton to implement a time, manner, and place guidelines for all protests, rallies, gatherings, specifically related to school facilities before, during, and after school hours. Just as parades and other events might require permits, this should be required for these gatherings, or at least to develop enforceable guidelines. Why am I asking for this now rather than when my 34 or 33 and 29-year-old children were in the schools? Well, simply because we've seen change. The world has changed. I was in Charleston. A transportation person told me about her church that experienced the church shooting a number of years ago, and how it has impacted her community and her school as a school psychologist. Simply, this change is horrible. We have greater hate, we have greater discord, we have greater intolerance for the other. Time, manner, and place guidelines will provide safe spaces for our students, crossing guards, faculty, staff, and others who traverse the grounds near our schools as pedestrians. It will help our town and police department be able to prepare for and take the necessary protections for participants, pedestrians, automobile, and bicycle traffic. This isn't to prevent or ban the ability for groups to gather, where it's a right in a free society. It's simply to balance their interests with those of our community at large. An issue has been identified because of these protests that have taken place. Change is okay to address these and create guidelines and possibly laws. Thank you.
Thank you. Eli Futterman. Ari Shokot next.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak at the open forum. Leadership. You are the leadership of our town. What's the definition of leadership? It's the ability to influence and guide and for us to follow you. I've listened to 12 or 13 speakers already. They were a doctor, psychologist, a teacher. I've heard from parents. I've lived here my whole life since I was 1 year old. I came 1 month old. I've been a resident of Brighton since 1958. Times have changed, and it requires the leadership that sits at this table tonight to make change before it's too late. It will be unfortunate and tragic if we wake up one day and find that we didn't take action, and what occurred at 12 Corners because we didn't want to take action because we think it's not politically correct will be sad, will be tragic, and it will be expensive to the town because it will have to defend the fact that we have come to asking for leadership, and yet you decide that it's politically difficult to make the choice to limit the hours of when protests can and cannot occur. These protests are very targeted. They're targeted to the members of the Jewish community who go to school at the 12 Corners. It's been said more than once. It was said that last time that there was a meeting similar to this, they don't go to Fairport, they don't go to Penfield, they don't go to any other school districts. They go to the 12 Corners because of the high concentration of Jewish students at the Brighton system. We are a pluralistic society. We did not have school at Brighton today because of Ramadan. I think that's fantastic. It shows the depth and the ability for this community to look at all different religions. We don't celebrate and don't have school on Easter. We don't have school on Rosh Hashanah. We don't have school on Christmas. We are a pluralistic society that has rules and regulations that you as government leaders can enact. We're not saying they can't protest. We're asking you to limit where they can protest to protect the children Again, a psychologist came here and said, trauma has a lifelong effect on children. Why take the risk to allow that to occur to our children? Again, politically, I understand you're getting pressure from the left, you're getting pressure from the right, you're getting pressure from the Muslim community, you're getting pressure from the Jewish community, but leadership requires decisive action. This board has always taken decisive action. Why are we all of a sudden becoming scared and afraid to take action that may be politically difficult?
30 seconds.
Thank you, Bill. You have the ability and you have the wherewithal and the support of a majority. You have 1,500 signatures of people who want this enactment. They have other places that they can protest. We're not saying we deny free speech. We're asking you to use smart speech for it to be free speech. Thank you.
Thank you. Ari, followed by Ben Rosen.
Ari Shokot, Grosvenor Road. Before break, I picked up my son from TCMS. He had a doctor's appointment. And there was a table set up for Ramadan. Again, love it. I really enjoy the diversity. That's why I moved here 16 years ago, other than the fact that my family dragged me here. On the way out, the members of the community that were going to table for Ramadan came in. And two of them were in keffiyehs. A keffiyeh originally was a shepherd's cloth or whatever. It's a terror scarf. It's a political statement to wear a keffiyeh. There are members of the Rochester City Council that wear keffiyehs. It's a terror scarf. My son was visibly shaken. Sent an email to Principal Edmonds, sent an email to Dr. McGowan. They said they're on it. I got a call from Dr. McGowan yesterday that keffiyehs will not be allowed in Brighton schools anymore. It took him a week. It only took him 1 week to make a decisive decision on what's clear hate speech and does not belong in a school. Why has it taken this board over 2 months to make a logical decision to restrict protest rights in the 12 corners? I actually just don't understand. The safety of our students are at risk. The safety of my kids are at risk. You walk on the Brickyard Trail. Do you want protests on the Brickyard Trail? Would that be a good place for a protest? This is our community, and I think that we have a right to safeguard it accordingly. Second point. There needs to be a crossing guard at the entrance and exit of TCMS during drop-off time. It is horrifically unsafe for the walkers, for the idiot drivers, and for the buses coming in and out of the loop. We do a great job in the 12 corners putting up the crossing guards. There needs to be a crossing guard in the entrance and exit of TCMS. You visited Malek's Bakery before Purim, and you had a Hamantashen. You've taken the first step at blotting out evil. Take the next step.
Thank you. Mr. Rosen, followed by Josh Futterman.
Thank you to the town of Brighton for hearing me out today. I live in Brighton. This is the second time I live in Brighton. We moved to Brighton in the early 2010s, and we loved it so much that we moved back from New York City in 2020. We love living in this town, and kudos to all of you for creating such an amazing town. The question I have for you today is, who do you prioritize? Your constituents or protesters coming in from other towns to Brighton because they want to make a statement? I believe that your job is to protect your constituents, no matter your personal beliefs. Your constituents are telling you that they would like a reasonable time and place restriction near the schools. We pay taxes to finance our town and our highly prized school. We live here. Many other local towns have limits and restrictions on protests and demonstrations. Why are we letting people from other towns show up and do nothing about it? Why is my son, who's sitting right there, yelled at by protesters, being called a genocidal monster? That happened. You can ask him. He's right here. Even if you agree with the message of the protests, your job is to protect your constituents when they feel threatened. You, by not doing anything, sends the message that you are disregarding the threat that your town's citizens are feeling. There's a petition that's going to be presented here that's where more than 1,000 people are asking you to act. Please do your job. Please respect your constituents. Please act before more violence happens. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, all right. Thank you very much. Seth Weinstein then, followed by is it Nina Rojas?
Hello, my name is Seth Weinstein. I have a house on Westland Avenue. I have children who go to 12 Corners Middle School and Brighton High School. And on behalf of over 1,400 people who have signed a petition titled Creating a Safer Community in Brighton, New York, I would like to formally present that petition to Supervisor Maley and the town board and all of the representatives from the town here this evening. Residents of Brighton, New York are concerned about the potential dangers that large gatherings near our schools can pose, regardless of the reason for the gathering. These events are inherently unsafe for our children and disrupt the educational environment, especially during high traffic times, including dismissal, when many children walk or ride bikes home from school. The town of Brighton must take action to regulate these gatherings to protect public safety. It's not just about noise or traffic congestion. It's about the well-being of our children who are exposed to potential hazards due to these large crowds. Accordingly, we support proposals for reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions on such gatherings near schools. This includes permitting requirements and enforcing stricter rules regarding proximity to school premises. According to the U.S. Supreme Court of Cox v. New Hampshire, such restrictions are not a violation of First Amendment rights, provided that they are applied uniformly to all groups. By implementing these changes, we can create a safer environment for our students while respecting individuals' rights to gather peacefully and speak freely. We urge you, local government officials, take this matter seriously for the sake of our community's future, our children. I'm going to submit this petition to Town Clerk Amon, and I will note that on the petition, there are decision makers: Robin Wilt, Nate Salzman, Christine Corrado, Christopher Warner, William Maley. This petition has been out here for 2 months, and unfortunately, we have received no responses from any of you. I ask you, please respond. Please take action.
Thank you. There you are. And followed by Aaron Rena.
Hi. Forgive me, because I don't usually come to these things. Has my time started yet?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. My name is Nelia, and I'm a member here of Brighton. 12 Corners area is quite a unique location, as you all know. It's extremely busy commercial area with 12 active corners, 3 traffic lights, and 3 schools adjacent with cars. There's trucks, there's pedestrians all day long. I've seen several car crashes at 12 Corners at the beginning and the end of each day. It's gridlock, it's very common, and some of the drivers are high school students who are inexperienced drivers. They're anywhere from 16 to 19 years old. A crowd of people with signs on any triangle is distracting for any driver, let alone a new driver. Not to say that protests should never be allowed. It's fine, but it is dangerous when all these factors do come together. That's why we as the town, I feel, needs to make it more clear that it is not to stifle free speech, but to put more of a reasonable time and place restrictions near a school. The large protests scheduled from 2 to 4 on weekdays outside of the middle school, you know, where there's violence, there's arrests made, and a man's skull was actually fractured. In addition to that, those 3 men were arrested and they weren't even from our town. What was that bringing here? I'm a part of RAID, Rochester Against Impaired Driving. I personally am a living victim of DWI and a total of 7 car crashes in a 24-year time span by distracted and impaired drivers. For me, this is very personal. I'm lucky to be here 7 times. And yes, I've got a bubble around me. As a parent, I'm sorry, because it's really
Take your
hard.
time.
7 times is a lot. Sorry. As a parent, I'm incredibly concerned about what might come next. With weapons, such as guns, or even vehicles that are 3 tons and more. And they're rammed into students, or something that can hurt a student, even one vehicle into another, such as children who have been hit by bikes, on their bikes. I'm worried that as not only distracted driving will cause unnecessary harm, but I'm also concerned that we may end up as the newest tragedy in line, with school tragedies such as Sandy Hook and Columbine, where we will never get to see our children or get them back. Please, I do this all day, every day. Keep our roads safe. Please keep our children safe on all sidewalks, all roadways, not just for the kids, but for the parents and their siblings and their cousins, and their
30
aunts
seconds.
and uncles. I just ask to keep it safe and just reduce the distraction. It's not necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Rena? Oh, there you are. I saw you earlier. I knew you were here. Meredith Dragon next.
Aaron Reina. My last name is actually pronounced as if I was German, but my family is Sicilian, and it's a Spanish last name, which I say because I grew up in Fairport. My family grew up in downtown Rochester, and up until the 60s, could have legally been prevented from living in Evans Farm, where I live now, and I'm very proud to live. It's a very diverse community, and I enjoy it every day. The issues that we're hearing today, there's a lot of emotional triggers based on today's events. Those weren't always the same events. They change periodically. I don't anticipate that we're going to, unfortunately, see an end of this circumstance anytime soon. Hopefully we do. But I could imagine in the 60s, if my grandparents had moved to Evans Farm, that it would have been possible for people to show up and protest their existence in town. That maybe my dad would have gone to school in Brighton and encountered some really ugly remarks and some really ugly things on a campus which is still not a secure campus, if you will. You could walk right on to the greenery outside of TCMS, outside of Brighton High School. There's no fencing. The same is true for a lot of schools in the area. If you go to McQuaid, the same thing is true. You can get onto the campus. It's not very secure in the sense that you can get there from the sidewalk. What I would ask you to consider is that all schools in our community need to have some kind of a buffer zone for the students to be able to come and go, for their parents to make that decision as to what is and is not safe, both emotionally and physically, for those children's well-being. If we talk to the administrators at TCMS and Brighton High School, you'll find out that they're talking about social emotional learning. We'll talk about the visits to counseling offices, and it's not isolated to one specific group. There are wars all over the world happening right now, and there are students in this district that are impacted by family members in those wars and in those communities. We don't know what will trigger. We don't know what horrific, horrible moment will happen when somebody decides that they're smarter than the rest of us in the room or on the street and decides to hit the accelerator on their car instead of hitting the brake as they're going by some of these events. They need to be a distance from the school. And if we need some kind of a legal precedent that might allow that stretch to happen, let's talk about hospitals. We couldn't host the same thing at the entrance to the hospital, and those are long-established rules. Even the people that work there have to put in prior notice. They have certain distance requirements and other regulations set by the NLRB. Those regulations exist, and yet 1199 and Local 200 are some of the strongest unions that exist in the community. We can have that here, still have free speech, still have distance. You'll probably see me at not the protests that were there, to be very clear. You'll see me at other protests. But we can all do that, and we can move together forward while keeping the kids safe and still allowing the adults to clash when they need to. Thanks.
Thank you. Meredith, and then Noel Spindle.
I'll be brief because I really only have 2 points that I wanted to make tonight. If I stood up here and I started yelling or screaming or making threats or throwing epithets, Bill, as you said in the beginning, I think you would have told me to sit down or to leave because there's decorum. And if I made other slurs standing up here, it would be completely unacceptable, and we all agree on that, and rightly so. I'd probably be asked to sit down or leave because we don't have the right to stand up here and say anything because we agree on a set of rules and principles within this setting. Bill, when you began the meeting, you said put the signs away, people agreed, refrain from attacks, boos, and personal attacks. This really isn't so complicated. Free speech isn't unlimited. It's not unlimited in this room. There are parameters, and there are often parameters in the name of public safety. And what we're asking you to take into account is the parameters that we can place between 2 and 4 o'clock at arrival time that help protect our children, our students, our teachers, and preserve public safety. My friend Kevin McGowan, our superintendent, this is my other point, supports regulations for arrival and dismissal. He shared that with me, and I know that he has shared it within the district. The person who is charged with the oversight and care of our children is fully supportive of the parameters that we're talking about tonight. And he shared this in a beautifully crafted communication with Brighton families a couple of months ago. I know many of you have seen it, and it's been quoted here before. So you don't really need to listen to me, but I think you do need to listen to your colleague and our friend Kevin, our superintendent of schools, who always has the best interest of our students in mind. And shouldn't we be following his lead as the professional in charge of our district if he feels that this is for the benefit of our district? I think it's important that we empower our families and we empower our superintendent to make those decisions that are in the best interest of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. And Michal Spivak to follow.
Good evening. Oded Spindle, Ashley Drive. 6 weeks ago, I stood here and spoke to you, so I'm not going to repeat what I said, but at the end of the letter, which was submitted, giving to the minutes, to enter into the minutes, there was a request for a formal written response regardless, yes, no, maybe, which 4 weeks ago I came and followed up, asked again. 2 weeks ago, I was sick, I wasn't able to come. Here I am tonight. I'm just wondering, when can we expect to receive a written response, regardless of outcome, to our request? And as you can see, people continue to show up. 1,500 people signed a petition. We are eager to get your guidance, regardless of what it is. We want to have this discussion. So I'm just wondering, Supervisor, when can we expect to get a written response?
Can you please continue your remarks, and I will address the...
That's it to this topic. I want to go to a different topic. So you want to comment now?
No, go ahead.
So completely unrelated. Chief Cathaldi, what position are you going to play Friday?
Basketball game. Basketball.
Hoops with the heroes.
Yeah, we need to know because we're preparing the team. And Supervisor, will you participate? Because then we're out.
Listen, I watched that Purdue game. Zach Edey.
Yeah. We would like to get a response to our first comments. Thank you.
Michal, and then there you are, and then Liz Reynolds.
Okay, thank you. I didn't have much time to prepare notes, but I scribbled a few talking points that I wanted to try to get to on my way over here. My name is Michal Spivak. I live on Grosvenor Road in Brighton. I've raised 2 kids that graduated from Brighton High School. And I first want to say thank you to all of you for sitting here and listening to all of these arguments of your constituents. It's so important to allow us to make our voices heard. And I also want to thank you, Supervisor Maley, for being extremely supportive of the Jewish community in the past, as you've proven time and time again. And basically, this particular topic, I think really, it's not about the Jewish community, it's about all of us. It's about all of us in Brighton, and it's about our kids' safety. while this may have been spurred by some of the events that happened over the course of the last few months, the protests that occurred at 12 Corners, it is something that is important to consider when it comes to any subject, any protest, any topic, any kind of gathering of that nature in order to protect the safety of our students. When I think about what our children, what our students today are faced with, it is unimaginable. It is nothing like anything that any of us had to face with. And I know, when we look back at our history, yes, as children, people have faced hardships. But really, especially when you compile that together with everything that our children see on social media, in the media itself, in the news, it's just so much that they're dealing with. It's our job to do everything in our power to control what it is that they're having to deal with in terms of stress, to protect their mental health and their safety. And we saw what these protests brought. And these are people, like other people have mentioned here in this room, they're not, for the most part, maybe there's a few, but for the most part, these are not residents of Brighton coming and voicing their opinions. These are outside residents from other towns, from other cities. They're coming here deliberately to target our students at Brighton School. And I remember on February 16th, I believe it was, and then followed by that on February 18th, and then there were additional protests. Those protests ended in violence. There were students that were walking home from school who arrived home shaken up in tears and scared. They were yelled at, they were chanted at, they were called murderers, they were told that they are baby killers. Horrible things were yelled at them, and these are young students. And that's what we're exposing them when we're allowing these protests to occur on school grounds or near school. I don't want to say on school grounds, but near our schools in Brighton, especially during dismissal. So I'm really asking you to do the right thing, to understand that you're not limiting free speech by enforcing some rules, some regulations, some limitations to when and where these protests can occur. I think that we all understand that upholding the constitutional rights of citizens is important, but we also need to understand that the highest priority that you have is the health and safety of our students. Thank you.
Liz Reynolds. Is Liz Reynolds here? Then we'll move on to Slajina Mitris. Followed by Larry Underberg. Thank you. Oh, yes, go ahead, Slajina.
Good evening. May I also take a privilege before you start measuring my time here? Robin, I want to thank your son for his service. I can relate. I have 3 children, 2 of which are serving in the United States Army and United States Navy. I'm a proud mom. We're invested with our heart and our soul in freedom, democracy of this country. At least that's the conversation in my house. My name is Slajina Mitris. I live on Varina Drive. I'm a little bit shaky, forgive me. I have fasted for Ramadan 30 days. I'm not Muslim, I'm Jewish. My parents disclosed that to me when our daughter went to Hillel school and called herself Jewish. They did stated to me that that's our background, but they have been under the wing of Christianity and they're not going to change their religion. I respect that. I had my own need for grounding in life, and that's what the Jewish religion provided for me. And I was blessed to immigrate in 1992 to the United States of America and practice my freedom,
whatever that term is, exercise my freedom and actually pursue the connection between my soul and spiritual or whatever provided grounding for accountability for me. And that is the Jewish religion. I'm very grateful for the Jewish community, for their kindness, for their mentorship, for their guidance. I am proud of the women's philanthropy that has provided for me to participate in Tikkun Olam, which provides for repairing the world. It's all about peace. This country, we've been kind of confused a little bit. I will include myself into this. Up until today, Evan, I would go out and say, I want to fight anti-Semitism. And after October 7, I've realized that fighting hate is an aggravation and pain and anger. So I found myself being 5 months in Macedonia because our daughter left the country because they were attacked while they were eating lunch during her attendance of yeshiva in New Jersey. That's why my sons, besides the respect for freedom and liberty, decided to go and actually fight in any way possible that they can to contribute for the freedom and liberty. I have served in political leadership of a party for the past 8 years because my family escaped war. I come from Macedonia. There was a genocide against the Bosnian people that we witnessed. Our country dissolved. The pain that we carry is the pain that Ukraine is actually enduring, what Israel has endured. I'm running off what I really wanted to say, but I want to show you something. This is what people say about me. Slajna, you have the Star of David, you have the Key of David, and you have a dog tag. I have a dog tag. Michal gave it to me. This is a dog tag. It is not a dog tag. It is responsibility for the world to remember
30 seconds.
that Israel actually tries to provide safe haven for the Jewish people that survived the Holocaust by chance. Those are Jewish children. Those are children, like your children, like my children, like some of your children that are right now being attacked, like my daughter was, and she said, I don't feel safe here. I'm going to leave this country. And she left. Please don't stop me. Give me one more second.
Okay.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
10 seconds, though.
I
please.
appreciate it. The damage that it is already caused. Trauma, it takes one time. These children are traumatized, like my daughter is. I had to spend 5 months, so my husband and I, we alternate. She's a strong human being. She fought for the black community when they were discriminated while attending high school after COVID as a result of COVID at Brighton School. She fought. People were discriminated. George Floyd was.
Time.
We all.
Time, Slajna.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Please.
I just one sentence, and I promise. All I wanted to say, thank you so much for your service. Thank you all for the support for people to thrive in this melting pot called Brighton. We have been here since 2009 with our daughter.
Slajna, please, Slajna, we have other speakers.
I promise, I will. I will. Let us find strength
Slajna.
through peace instead of foster hatred through fighting hate that we carry, perhaps some of us as ideology.
I appreciate
it.
but I need to ask you. Thank you. Larry Underberg, to be followed by Richard Dollinger.
Can I ask a question? Does that take up part of my
Yes, it does.
3 minutes?
Yes, it does.
Okay, well, then I'll get to the point. Is it Mancuso or Mancuso, the town attorney? How do you pronounce that?
Mancuso.
This is how I sleep, because you haven't followed through in the town, in the police department, and code enforcement, because I've had complaints filed for 2 years with the same situation at 140 Meadow Drive. By the way, I'm at 150 Meadow Drive with a complaint, which I did sign another one today. I've had probably the police and animal control in the neighborhood 3, 4, 5 times this week because I've lost track. And I received your email, and I noticed that you sent the letter out after you decided that it was a good time and not after the last meeting. But as it says in your letter, your email, that this could go on to the court situation if it continues. Well, it's continuing. Oh, man. It's continuing on, and it's not stopping, and it's only getting worse. So I don't know at this point why you're not letting the town and the police and the code and everybody do their job, and why you're preventing it. In 2022, 2 years ago, I filed a complaint and we were in court. And same reason, same people. And the only reason that it got settled at that point is because I agreed, I don't know if I told you this or not, to a compromise. My idea of compromising was different than the neighbor's idea of compromising. I'm going to compromise and tolerate them to continue on with this nonsense. So, you know what? I've heard the word traumatized used tonight. I'm traumatized, and I am going for medical help. I have consulted, not retained, an attorney by your advice, and this is going to escalate into a lot bigger problem for the owner of the house, for the tenant, for the town, because I'm not going to live like this. And I don't know why you're not doing your job. Maybe you're too busy. I've noticed that you have your law firm representing Riga, Scottsville, Fairport. Maybe you're a little thin. Maybe you should take it down a notch and do a better job for
Mr. Underberg, please refrain from personal attacks.
Is that a personal attack? I'm sorry, I'm talking to the attorney. He sent me a nasty email, which, by the way, the email you sent me, you weren't there to hear anything or any conversations. You being an attorney should know what hearsay is. And hearsay is not valid.
30 seconds.
And go ahead, and I'm just making this complicated for everybody because you're not following through. So I guess my question is, I have 20 seconds left, where are we going from here? Since you seem like you have this whole thing under control, but you don't.
This is for your opportunity to address the town board. I'm not going to discuss your filing of a complaint with the town court in an open meeting. So if you have a question you'd like to direct to the board, I will address that outside of this forum.
I've got a better idea. Why don't we sit down in private, because I have property in another town, and when this situation was something different than a dog 20 years ago, they offered to have a private meeting where we all sat down and we discussed it like adults. And you know what? It was resolved immediately. It didn't drag on like this thing is here. And by the way, this has been going on for 6 years, 2 years with these people and 4 years previously, and they're making a joke out of everybody. To them, it's just funny. Yeah, well, the police are here, the dog's outside barking.
Time, Mr. Underberg. Thank you.
I made my point. Thank you for your help, for your time. I would like a follow-up, too, of something.
If you have any written material you'd like to submit to the town clerk, you're free to do so.
Thank you. Take care.
Mr. Dollinger. Mr. Dollinger is the last person signed up here in person, so we will, after your remarks, we will look to folks that are on Zoom. So go ahead. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'm back 2 weeks later, and I just wanted to address the same topic I talked about 2 weeks ago. My name is Richard Dollinger. I live at 2795 East Avenue, and I have never been in, I've been in this room a lot, given my past. Seldom have I ever been in this room where I heard one thing sharp, clear, and distinctly, and that is protect our children. I hear from people in this room, especially in the Jewish community, because of a whole bunch of other factors, that the protection of their children is vital. I simply want to remind you, I want to protect all of our children, whether they're Catholics, Protestants, Islamic, Hindi, or whomever. I want their ability to go back and forth to school and to participate in the education process that we all pay for and adore in this community, so that it can occur in a civil, realistic way. It seems to me that putting reasonable restrictions on gatherings within 500 feet, 250 feet, pick a distance of school buildings in this community. There's been protests that have been mentioned. My personal opinion as a lawyer and once upon a time doing something else in the legal system is that it applies to gatherings. It's not a question of protest. It's not about the message of the protest. It's about gatherings. It's about the conglomeration of people in a particular place that disturbs the ability of students to go back and forth to school. I believe that reasonable time and place restrictions and manner restrictions can be imposed. I happen to be against the idea of putting it subject to a permit, because if you permit one, you will end up having to permit them all. Ban those kinds of protests within 250 feet, 500 feet, pick a distance, and make sure that our schools are safe. This is part of Brighton's great tradition. It's a tradition of a community that I can proudly say I've lived in longer than Eli Fuderman. So I've been here a long time. I treasure this community. I treasure the people we've put our faith in. And I think what the community needs to hear is loud and clear that their children, our children, my grandchildren, will be safe in a school building and safe when they walk to and from school. That's what I believe the most treasured part of Brighton is all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Please. Thank you. Well, we will now go. We have no other individuals signed up to speak. We will now go to Zoom. Mr. Lawrence, Sandy, we're going to the Zoom now. If you would sign up. Okay, then we're going to go to the Zoom. Mr. Lawrence, we'll get to you though. We'll get to you. Mr. Lawrence was on the Zoom and had his hand up earlier, but I don't believe that he is on the Zoom any longer. And there is nobody else on Zoom that has used the raised hand function to speak. So then I will recognize my predecessor, Supervisor Sandy Frankel.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you to all of you here for hearing the community. This is one thing that Brighton has done for decades very well, and that's to listen and then to respond. We are a very proud community, and people who have come before this board time and again do it with civility, with respect, and with emotion, so you can hear it in my voice too. Never mind the hoarseness. But I'm here because one of the principal responsibilities of town government, of most governments, but of town government, is public safety. And the safety of our children is paramount. It wouldn't matter to me if there were a protest against Muslims or against Christians or Hindus or any other faith community or ethnic community. If people are protesting in a way that harm our children, whomever they are, whatever their backgrounds, I'd be there standing to protect the children and to protect those folks the right to express their views, but to do it in a safe way. So as you think about the requests that have come in, mindful that we have imposed over the decades restrictions on all kinds of activities that may harm children, imposing distances and imposing other types of parameters that will keep our community, whether it's schools, children, churches, residential neighborhoods, but keep them safe. So think about the kinds of legislation, the kinds of regulations that we have imposed in the past as a potential guide for how we proceed forward. And I thank you so much for listening. And sorry I wasn't here early enough to get my name on the list.
No worries. Thank you very much.
But it's great to see you all, and God bless you.
It's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you, Sandy. We now have an individual, Alexi, on Zoom, who has used the raised hand function. So I would ask that he be unmuted and allowed to speak. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Go ahead, Mr. Tetanoff, if you would state your full name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Lexi. I wanted to share my thoughts about restricting freedom or taking away people's freedom. It's not a good thing. Lots of people did that in the 1940s, and that did not turn out well. Taking more and more freedoms, one drip at a time, will result in terrible consequences. I understand that that people are concerned about the safety of their children, but in my opinion, taking away freedom is not the correct and more effective choice. Education and speech indicating why person's point of view is not effective or the right point of view because of whatever reason. So I don't believe that taking freedoms away is the right choice. The founding fathers of this country advocated violence. They went through and they ended the lives of British cops using violence. So they were for the violent overthrow of the government in place, and that's not what I advocate for, and nor do I want this situation to ever get close to. But stealing freedom is not the right way. Do a marketing campaign of your point of view and share your point of view and why your point of view matters most to more and more people. And I believe that'll be a far more effective way to communicate your point of view than taking away everybody's freedom. When you take away everybody's freedom, you will end up taking away your own freedoms down the road. At some point, they'll take away your ability to wear religious clothing or artifacts that you find important for your spiritual well-being. And I'm not for any more freedoms being taken away. So that's my feedback tonight. Good luck to you guys.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on Zoom that would like to speak? If so, please use the raised hand function on Zoom. You'll be unmuted and allowed to speak. Is there anyone else here in the room that would like to speak that has not yet had a chance to speak? Yes, sir. I can't see who that is in the back, but come on up. Okay, there you go. If you would please state your name and address.
My name is Shalom Wertzberger, and I am a resident of Penfield, north of Brighton. However, I would like to ask you, each one of you, to look inside yourself and answer a few questions. The first one being, do you recognize that there is such a thing as verbal violence? And I would like to submit that calling somebody a murderer, calling somebody a genocidal person, displaying basically a non-true, non-supported such allegation, if that is a violence, an act of violence by itself. And if you think it is, I ask you, do you do enough to prevent it? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who has not spoken that would like to speak? I do see one person who spoke already. We'll give you another minute.
Again, Odette Spindle, Ashley Drive. Just want to clarify my question because I thought you indicated you will make a comment later, or I misunderstood.
I will be.
You will be. Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else in the room that would like to speak? One last time for people on Zoom. Is there anyone on Zoom? Nobody is using the raised hand function at this point.
Bill, if there's no one further in the open forum,
No. I do want to say something before we conclude the open forum. Mostly, I want to thank everybody that came tonight, and thank you in particular for your thoughtful comments, but also for the decorum here this evening. It is much appreciated, and it allows not only us, but it allows the people in the room to hear your remarks and to process them. We all want our kids to be safe, our grandkids, some of us. And thanks to the Brighton Police Department, and thanks to the collaborative relationships that the Brighton Police Department has, not only with the public schools, the private schools here in the town, but also with many other law enforcement agencies and other community organizations. I am confident, we can be confident, that our children are safe in Brighton. I also appreciate the people who have listened and frankly heeded the thoughtful words of Dr. Kevin McGowan, Rabbi Peter Stein, and the words of other community members by striving to respect the children, their schedules, and to model adult behavior so that our children can see modeled adult behavior. I have spoken with Dr. McGowan and with Rabbi Stein. I expect to do some more and to meet with them in the very near future to hear more about their own personal concerns, but also concerns that they have received from within their communities. I anticipate that that will be an opportunity for me to listen, for them to listen, and to have ongoing dialogue. We will, recognizing that I believe very strongly, and I want to assure everybody in the room that in large part thanks to the Brighton Police Department, they will do everything. We saw their engagement just a few days ago with a young woman that went missing. You know, you see the news and you see that little bit that's above water, but all the paddling that was going on underneath it is extraordinary. That is the kind of work that the Brighton Police Department does for children in this community. But as we engage in those dialogues and in those conversations, the constitutional rights of free speech and assembly are the First Amendment to the Constitution, a reflection of how important they also are. My goal, as I listen tonight, as we continue dialogue with community leaders and everyone in this community. This is a community where you don't have to be a leader to come in and speak to the town board, and we welcome that. My goal, and I believe it's all of our goal, is to aspire higher for Brighton, to strive to be the best Brighton that we can be. Now, what do I mean by that? Back in 2019, a large group of community members, Jews and non-Jews, but organized at least in part by the Jewish Federation, stood in solidarity with the Muslim community here in Rochester, in Brighton, at the Islamic Center of Rochester, following the horrific mass shootings at mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand. And the Islamic Center of Rochester reciprocated, showed their gratitude for the solidarity of the people that stood with them that evening by inviting us into the mosque to listen, to share their prayers with all of us. That was the best of Brighton. When Monica Gabel and Dr. Rashid Muhammad met in an informal gathering of people here at Town Hall, a gathering that I called together that led to the formation of CURB, Community Uprooting Racism in Brighton. Dr. Muhammad told Monica that he had never had Friday night Sabbath dinner in a Jewish home. Monica immediately invited Rashid and his wife, Monica, also Monica, to Shabbos dinner. And Monica and Rashid joined the Gabel family. The bond that was created by that conversation and by the dinner and the continued connections between those families, it was established, it is deep, and it has lasted to this day. That was and is the best of Brighton. We as adults all can model the best of Brighton in the worlds we live in, and I encourage us all to do so. We have listened seriously tonight, and at previous sessions we will continue to do so. This is not something that just gets written slapdash overnight. Decisions are not made slapdash overnight. We're going to continue to listen and make judgments with the very deep respect for the constitutional and legal guidance from council and from the law enforcement guidance of Chief Cathaldi. And as we listen to their voices and yours, we will take action we ultimately, hopefully as a community, can find to be the best for our children and for all of us. Thank you again. We are not taking any action tonight. And Chris, if you want to move, I'll just give everybody one more shot. Is there anybody else that would like to address the board that hasn't yet spoken during the open forum? Hearing none, Chris, go ahead. Thank you for being here. You're welcome to stay, but it's already quarter to 9, so.
Bill, I move we...
I have a question. What is the procedure if Brighton residents would like a formal vote on a request to provide rules of protesting without affecting free speech? Is there a way that members of the community can petition the town board to take a definitive action so that we know where each of you stand, so that in the future we know who we want to support or maybe not support?
I'm going to turn that over to council, but I know the answer, but go ahead, John.
There is not a process under New York law to petition a town board to take action on whether to adopt legislation. That is vested in the 5 elected officials of the town to decide in their discretion whether to introduce that law and what the content of that law is.
So there is no procedural way for members of the community to act to get anything changed in our town? Is that what you're basically saying? Unless the 5 of you, majority of the 5 of you, nothing can happen?
There are limited areas where permissive or mandatory referenda are allowed. Those are generally related to land use issues. We have seen the petition. I've read it very carefully. I've heard your voices tonight. And as I said, this is not something that we will review in a slapdash way. What has been, you have seen thoughtful listening and engagement with you, but acting irresponsibly, acting quickly, hastily, without ensuring that council, law enforcement, and community leaders that you and I respect, we want to hear directly their guidance and then make thoughtful decisions. I'm not going to cast in public any thoughts on the petitions or anything that anybody else has said, but I'm going to listen very closely to all of your remarks. And
so again, just for a point of clarification, because I think there's a tremendous amount of frustration of 1,500 residents who have signed the petition. You guys can basically decide never to take up any action. We have no way of knowing whether you discussed it or just given us lip service here, that you've listened to us for an hour and a half and can go and continue your business without any way for us to know whether you'll take any action. Is that what I hear from our city attorney?
as I indicated, I will be speaking further. Dr. McGowan's name was referenced tonight. Rabbi Stein, he and I have talked. Dr. McGowan and I have talked. I want to hear directly their input, just as I've heard directly your input. Rabbis, neither one of them could be here tonight. This is not something, there is a process for amending the town code. It is not something that is done simply, and it's also not the only way that a community can act to ensure that public safety, which absolutely is a priority, is reflected in the work that we do. So I appreciate your questioning. We've given you a lot of leeway in allowing us to speak to.
You're not telling us what, as residents of the town, we can do to find out where you stand on this. If you're telling us you're going to meet with those two people, and that can't take, it'll take you 4 weeks to meet with them, are we just supposed to be frustrated residents of our town?
Our meetings are public. We welcome your participation. We welcome you watching us. We welcome, someone asked about me walking on the Brickyard Trail. People stop me all the time, and I welcome those conversations.
In the absence of a process you're forced to follow, I think you're impelled upon to create the process you will use, and we'd like to know what that is. If not an answer, here's what we're doing and when we'll do it.
And I've told you the next steps. I've told you the next steps in terms of talking to community leaders. Please, gentlemen, I've given you both a lot of leeway here.
I also pay taxes in this town, Bill, just so you know. So I
Thank you.
both ways.
Chris, can we move? I'm sorry. As I indicated, and you know what? I was so pleased with the way 98% of the people in this room have continued to conduct themselves. We have been here for 2 hours listening patiently to you. We have asked you, and most of you have followed those rules. I gave everybody the opportunity to speak during the open forum. We will continue to give you that opportunity, but I'm sorry, we have.
Robert's Rules of Order allow for questions to be asked at any time. I assume that the town of Brighton runs under Robert's Rules of Order?
The town of Brighton runs under the.
Well, I'm just trying to understand. You have a frustrated city. You have frustrated.
Mr. Fuderman, would you like my answer?
Yes, I would like.
All right. Thank you. The town of Brighton operates under the rules of New York state law, the town law of the state of New York, as well as other laws. And I'm stepping on my town attorney's toes, but that's okay. Town law does not require public input at meetings. It doesn't. Someone chuckled at that. Town law doesn't require that. We have thought for years it's important to do that. We think it's important to have ASL interpreters so that everyone can hear that input. We have chosen, and we do at every meeting, as well as at every one of our committee meetings. Most town boards don't have additional public committees that meet in open session and take comment. We do. We take that seriously. We also take seriously complicated questions of constitutional law, and that's what we will continue to do. Thank you, Mr. Footerman, for being here. Chris, go ahead.
You had one more comment back, Bill.
All right. 1 minute.
I appreciate the minute. What I was thinking about was when my children were younger and I would drive down East Avenue or whatever street and I would see the horrific pro-life posters and I could tell my children to close their eyes while we drove by. The children or others who are experiencing protests, no matter what they are not able to close their ears, maybe not able to close their eyes when they're trying to cross the road. We owe our children, we owe our pedestrians the right to be able to move safely. I think the town has an obligation to establish a timeline for proceeding and for seeking input from more than just two. Create a committee that works with the Public Safety Committee or what have you. But from what I understand, this has gone on for 2 months already. There should be a plan to move forward, not just to listen, not just to make me feel like your eyes are a little bit closed to what the community is asking for. Thank you.
Just to be clear, it's gone on for a month. This is the third meeting that we have heard from people. It started in the immediate aftermath of 3 groups, on 3 occasions where there were people gathered in the 12 Corners Park. Yes, Michal.
Thank you. I just felt very concerned when I heard you sitting there and saying that, after consulting with our Brighton police, you can assert that our children are safe. I don't think any of us can say that. I don't think that it's the right thing to do is to just sit and wait for something horrific to happen. We really do need action. It's almost as if we're assuming that everyone adheres to the same values and the same rules and the same behaviors that we expect, but unfortunately they do not. It's as if you would say, oh, we don't need traffic laws, we just have the expectation that everybody will drive safely and that everybody will, be courteous and will, of course we need those rules and those laws. And the same thing here, you can't just say we have the expectation that people will behave respectfully and that will not, come into our town and start chanting and start yelling, and that people, and those stories were beautiful, by the way, those examples that you gave. But we can't make that assumption that those individuals who are coming here with those protests or any other future protest are going to have or share those values. So for that reason, we need rules and we need those actions, and we need it now before something horrific happens. Thank you.
Thank you, McCall. Sir?
Mr. Maley, what are you waiting for? You have all these people here. The message you are sending by disregarding us, by saying that there's nothing we can do to compel you to have a vote, is that you do not prioritize us. Who do you prioritize as a town board? We pay taxes. Our kids go to school here. We want a peaceful life free of threats. Why will you not act?
Thank you. Okay. Thank you again for being here. And Chris?
That concludes the comments. Bill, I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Second. Thank you, Robin. Discussion? Are you okay, or do you need a break in terms of, okay. Hi. know, we need to continue with the meeting. We need to continue with the meeting. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, we need, Dan, please call the roll. We have a motion on the floor. Please, please, please.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado. Councilmember Salzman.
Aye.
Supervisor Mailing.
Aye. All right. We have two public hearings tonight. The first one is on the continuation of the hearing on the incentive zoning proposal for a Topgolf sports and entertainment facility near the corner of East Henrietta Road and Westfall Road. The second one is a hearing on an amendment to an existing incentive zoning set of approvals underlying the Jewish Senior Life campus. First, Christine, we've had you do this. Can I have a motion to take the Topgolf hearing back off the table?
I think I have this memorized, but I'm going to ask Mr. Mancuso to be sure I got it right. I move that we table the...
Take it off. It'd be a motion to take off the table the public hearing for the proposed.
Off the table, public hearing for the proposed incentive zoning rezoning application for Topgolf.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman.
Aye.
Supervisor Mailing.
Aye. We do have a couple of additional items that were circulated earlier today, some visuals of the facility, as well as some dialogue with the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, concerning lighting and height of the poles and their location in the landing zone for the Greater Rochester International Airport. And I would ask that those items be included in the record of this public hearing. Do we need a motion to do that, or we can just
No.
read them in? Yep.
Nope, we're all set. Thank you.
So I declare that with the item having been taken off the table, the public hearing is open. Is there anyone here that would like to address the board concerning the proposed Topgolf sports and entertainment facility? We've had a lot of discussion on this. At this point, we had anticipated getting some of that information earlier, the elevations and the like. We've got it now. I think I want all of you to have a chance to look at those, and we will have the opportunity in 2 weeks to complete the seeker review process. What I think I'd like to do is, if there's any, I see no one here that wants to address the board, to give that material and to give everybody the opportunity to have seen it. I think we're going to hold this public hearing open one more cycle, one more meeting. We won't take action tonight on the neg deck, although you do see a draft of the neg deck. And of course, we won't be taking action on the substance of the project. So, is there anyone here that would like to participate either on Zoom or in person? Hearing none, I would ask one more time, I hope, for a motion to table this public hearing until the April 24th, 2024 meeting of the Brighton Town Board.
I move that we table this public hearing until Wednesday, the 24th, 7 p.m.
Second.
Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner. Aye. Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Next, we have a public hearing on proposed modifications to the previously approved incentive zoning for the Jewish Senior Life Campus located at 2021 Winton Road South. You also have a proposed negative declaration under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Although I don't anticipate taking action either on the seeker or on the substance tonight. Dan, has the necessary legal notice been given in this matter?
It has, Supervisor. Sorry, bear with me. I got one. My computer re-imaged today. I'm trying to find everything again. This was published in the March 11th edition of the Daily Record.
Thank you. Notice having been given, I declare this public hearing to be open, and I believe we have counsel for Jewish Senior Life here with us. Mr. Goldman, please proceed.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, members of the board. My name is Jerry Goldman. I am the attorney and agent for Jewish Senior Life and its affiliate, the Jewish Home of Rochester, who are the applicants this evening for a modification of a condition of the incentive zoning approval, which was granted in 2015. I will give a short recitation of the history. Well, first let me say, you see that the room is relatively empty. I anticipated, based upon the crowd that was here and the fact that people were downstairs, that perhaps this session would last a lot longer in the public forum. I feel qualified to be able to make the presentation fully on my own with the assistance of the graphics provided by the engineers and the architects, and also understanding the board is not likely to be prepared to take action on the matter tonight in any event. So our presentation tonight is going to address our request to modify a condition of the incentive zoning approval, not the incentives or the amenities that were granted in 2015. With that, I'll provide a little bit of a history of this. The first piece of paper that you have in front of you, and perhaps I should put it on the board for the benefit of the public as well, is a picture of the overall site of the Jewish home parcel, which is one of the parcels of the Jewish Senior Life campus. For those who were on the board at the time, you may recall in 2015 our objective was to create a number of what are referred to as greenhouses, which are a different style of skilled nursing facility along the front of the parcel, and to provide a independent living building in the southwest corner of the site, which is essentially intact with the modification that we'll be talking about as part of this application. As things have evolved over the course of time, our initial proposal was to have 6 greenhouse buildings out in front of the existing Jewish home tower, if you will, the 7-story building. We have reduced the number of buildings to 3 on the site, but we are looking for, as a part of this request, essentially a modification of the condition of incentive zoning, which basically was our application initially, to have a 75-unit, 75,000 square foot building. But as a part of the reduction of our greenhouse facilities, we are proposing a slight modification of the independent living building on the southwest corner of the site. And we'll be focusing on the details of that as part of this presentation and as part of this approval. Basically, everything else remains in place. As I said, we are not modifying any of the incentives or the amenities which are involved, so therefore is not a full amendment of the incentive zoning itself, but relief from a condition which was essentially a self-imposed condition because we thought that the demand was going to be for a maximum of 75 what are considered to be moderately priced independent living units on the southwest corner of the parcel. As it turns out, the need for the 6 buildings was not there, so therefore the mass has been reduced substantially. And in essence, now we have, as a result, the remaining request, which would be an increase in the amount of the square footage and number of units in that area in the southwest. The essential shape and location of the building remains the same. Footprint increases slightly with regard to it. The parking and the configuration are all the same on the site. As part of our request and application, our engineers did a full environmental review and a full engineering report, which have been submitted to the town and which have been reviewed and under review by staff as a part of this process. In addition, we have met with the town board's Public Works Committee on a couple of occasions, and we have modified our plans in accordance with the comments that we have received. As part of this, it should be noted that we are located in the BHD1 zoning district, which allows buildings as high as 7 stories. Our initial independent living building was slated to be a 3-story building, but we are proposing that that building be a 4-story building. And the board expressed interest in having a sense of the context of that building relative to the remainder of the site. One thing that I will point out before we go to the elevation perspective drawings themselves is that the greenhouse buildings are, while they're 3 stories, they're high in terms of their elevation. In fact, our building is an average height of 51 feet, the absolute highest point being 58 feet compared to the highest peak of 54 feet 8 inches for the greenhouse buildings. So among the drawings which you have received are 3 additional perspectives, and I don't know if I shorted myself one here. Nope, I still have it back here. The first piece of paper that you have that looks like this is a sense of the overall campus and a depiction of the views. You'll notice the numbers are 4, 5, and 8, and the reason why they are 4, 5, and 8 instead of 1, 2, and 3 is that we took them from the same place that we did in 2015, and the perspectives that were relevant to the building that we are talking about are perspectives 4, 5, and 8. As we move on in our stack, the perspective drawings are in order. View 4 is a view essentially coming from the intersection of Meridian Center Boulevard and Winton Road, looking in a westerly direction. And you can see that we are roughly the same height as the greenhouse buildings. They are closer, and therefore the perspective of the tower, while it is taller, is further away, and therefore it looks shorter in degree from that view and perspective. So this perspective really does establish our building is essentially in commonality with the remainder of the structures on the Jewish home parcel. The next perspective drawing we have is perspective number 5, which is at the corner of Meridian Center Boulevard and Summit Circle Drive, and again, just depicts where we are relative to the site. And the final perspective, which is perspective 8, just gives a sense of the building itself and really gives a view of the summit in the background as well, which is on an adjacent parcel. So essentially, we are proposing a building which is consistent and in accordance with the existing buildings that we have on the site and does accomplish our objective of trying to right-size, if you will, the independent living, moderately priced independent living product, which is the building at the southwest corner of the Jewish home parcel on this campus. I don't know that I have much more to present relative to this other than the fact that all the engineering, architecture, and the like have been submitted to the town, have been reviewed. I believe that they've been shared with the town board as part of the packets. In addition, we have had review by county planning as required under the general municipal law, who came back with generic comments, nothing of note relative to this particular proposal. And in addition to that, we also have had staff review of this proposal. So to that extent, we are fully in front of this board and prepared to answer any questions that the board may have at this point.
Perfect segue. Board members, any questions that any of you have?
We've had a very extended discussion at the Public Works Committee several months ago, Jerry, and I have no further questions.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. For perspective, I believe that our last meeting was in January of the Public Works Committee. I think we were there in December as well.
Yes.
Obviously, the context of this meeting is a little bit different. That was a committee meeting. This is a meeting of the full town board and a public hearing. So I do want to just discuss briefly, if you would, as you describe this, of course, this is a modification of pre-existing incentive zoning approvals, plural, for the Jewish Senior Life Campus.
Correct.
Would you discuss the incentives that you are requesting, as well as any amenities you're proposing, and the backdrop as to why you're
right? As I indicated, we are not seeking to amend any of the incentives and amenities from the original incentive zoning, which was granted on March 11, 2015. There was a condition in Schedule C2, and that condition defined the 6 greenhouse buildings and defined an independent living building not exceeding 78,200 square feet with a maximum of 75 units. We essentially are looking to have this redefined to reduce the greenhouse buildings and the number of residents, obviously, within them, and increase the independent living building. As a part of that initial incentive zoning, there were substantial incentives and amenities that were discussed. The incentives that were requested dealt with the minimum livable floor area, the maximum building length, some setback issues. Also, one which is carried over and should be noted is that the town code generally requires a certain modicum of covered parking, and we were granted an incentive allowing unenclosed parking spaces at a ratio of 1.4 per unit. In terms of the amenities which were offered, the amenities were pretty broad relative to it. There was a parcel at the front of this site, which was in fact slated to be a medical office building. That is now gone, but what we have done is that essentially an amenity which was offered, since Jewish Home is a not-for-profit and typically would not pay taxes, was to essentially make the town whole relative to the taxes as it dealt with that parcel as it would have been if it was constructed as an office building. And basically it was, I believe the multiplier was $40,000 per year plus a cost of living, if you will, or a tax adjustment, as it were. So that was the primary incentive, or excuse me, primary amenity which occurred relative to this, understanding that in reality, this is a not-for-profit. It's part of the not-for-profit purpose. But since we were taking essentially a piece of property which could have been income generating to the town, we have replicated that, and we have been paying that $40,000 plus the adjustment on an annual basis since it was granted in 2015.
Thank you. That's exactly the kind of detail I was hoping we'd get in the record. Thank you very much, Jerry.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
Mr. Goldman, could you just remind us the change in square footage and the height?
The square footage increase, we were authorized to a maximum of 78,200 square feet, I believe. And we're talking about a maximum now of 90,000 square feet. So to my mind, that's relatively incremental. In addition, the number of actual units is the authorization is sought to be increased from 75 to 90. There was no detail provided initially with regard to this building, because there wasn't really any design of the building when we came in 2015. So there wasn't any height which was really called out at that time. There wasn't a particular condition limiting it to 3 stories either. But what was shown and what we had said was that we anticipated it would be 3 stories in height. But the elevations that we have also point out, and if you go out to the Jewish Home site, drive on South Winton, you can see that for a 3-story building, those greenhouses are pretty tall. Okay. While normally we would say a 3-story building would be in 40 to 45 feet, these are in excess of 50 feet for 3 stories. So we are proposing something which is consistent with the rest of the campus.
Thank you for that clarification.
Any other questions or comments? I actually see on the Zoom that Marathon Engineering has entered the waiting room.
You can check and see if Matt is going to contradict anything I had to say.
I will admit them.
I should say that representatives of Marathon Engineering, SWBR Architects, as well as the construction team and financial people from Jewish Senior Life and the Jewish Home were present, and I asked for the indulgence and to do the presentation on my own and spare them the wait, which didn't turn out to be that bad in the whole scheme of things.
But having admitted Marathon Engineering, I don't know if that's Matt or whomever, into the Zoom, I'll just, Jerry's made a full presentation. If there's anything that Marathon wants to add, you can raise your hand and we'll it looks like I'm not seeing any. I'm not seeing that. So, John, your expectation is, if we have no one else here, that we'll close the hearing?
That is within your discretion, Supervisor. If you believe all the information you need on the request to amend the current incentive zoning approval has been received by the town board and there are no further public comments, you may close the public hearing.
We don't have any members of the public. Are there any more questions from board members?
Jerry, you mentioned there's not a significant change here. I just used my calculator.
Yeah.
You're essentially asking for a 15% increase in square footage and a 20% increase in number of units.
In exchange for the reduction in the authorization for the greenhouse buildings themselves. So the net of it, and I haven't calculated what the square footage difference would be, but it's clearly the three buildings that we are giving up.
Foregoing, yeah.
Yeah, we're foregoing 3 one-story buildings that are, I'm not sure exactly what the square footage is, but it's certainly far more than the 15,000 square feet that we are looking for.
Thank you. That's helpful.
And if I may add, Councilperson Werner, the reduction is also 60 units for those 3 buildings. So there's a 60-unit reduction corresponding to a 15-unit increase in the new configuration.
So the net overall is a reduction both in square footage and in number of units.
That's correct.
And I know, we've had this conversation, but I know the owner understands that, and we've worked with Jewish Senior Life over the years on several iterations and several changes, and I think this is really a trailblazing incentive zoning approval and a very successful one. That change happens, and but at this point, those 3 buildings will be sort of essentially off the approved plan.
Correct. Correct. As you take a look at the plan itself, which is the first document that I gave you, actually our reconfiguration really doesn't allow us to put anything much more here. We had a building up in this area, but it would constrict the parking for the rest of the campus and would likely affect the drainage located on the northeast area of the site, and also would have an impact on green space. So in reality, this is something which Jewish Senior Life, the Jewish Home, has voluntarily given up in exchange for what I would consider to be a modest increase in the independent living building.
Good. Go ahead.
Additional question. Will you remind us where this collection of units fits within the overall range, price range or target to community members?
I don't have, it's a market rate for independent living, but because of its style, it's relatively modest in price. So we'll be on the lower end of what the price would be. It's also a different model. When you're talking about the independent living, which is the Summit parcel to the west of us, that is part of a continuum of care program in conjunction with the WOLC, which is assisted living, and then the skilled nursing facility, which is the Jewish Home. And there's a lot more integration in terms of the pricing and price. There are initial deposits dealing with that and everything else. This is not designed to do that. This is designed to provide independent living for people. There will be some integration of programming between them, but it's not part of the formal continuum of care.
Any other questions or comments? Then unless anybody feels otherwise, I'm going to suggest that we close the public hearing. Again, we won't take any action tonight. I anticipate we'll take at least seeker and perhaps substantive approval as well at our next meeting.
Okay, we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Then I declare the public hearing to be closed. And with that, we're finished with the public hearings for tonight. Dan, did you get any communications that, you got a magazine, Are there any other communications that you want to include in the?
A couple of written remarks along with the printout of the petition.
Okay. Then let's, can I have a motion to include all of the materials that Dan received during the open forum, which he will itemize for us, including the magazine?
Not signed, but.
Sure. Sorry.
I move that we receive and file the communications offered during the public forum.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Committee reports. Robin, Community Services.
Thank you, Bill. The Community Services Committee has not met in the intervening timeframe since our last town board meeting. I do have a few very quick updates from our Parks and Recreation Department heads. But first off, I just wanted to comment on what a tremendous community celebration was had during the eclipse. Thank you to both Becky Cotter, our Recreation Director, and Matt Beeman, our Park Superintendent, for their dedication to the Bright On, Bright Off Total Solar Eclipse event. The community atmosphere that Becky
Look at
and
that.
Matt-
Right on cue. They added it to the Zoom feed.
There you go.
Nice job, Steve.
Very slick. The community atmosphere that Becky and Matt and all of their staff, especially Emily Kelsey, were able to create was truly special and befitting this once-in-a-lifetime celebration. So I just wanted to extend the board's deepest thanks all the way around. An update from our Parks Department, staff is busy getting fields prepped and lined for spring youth athletic seasons. The Buckland Park restrooms were opened for the season on Monday, April 8th for the eclipse, and Meridian Center Park bathrooms will open next week. From our Recreation Department, as usual, we have some exciting spring events and ongoing programming. Mentioned earlier, our Hoops with Heroes will be on Friday, April 12th from 6 to 7:30 at the Brookside Recreation Center. Please enter at the Winton Road entrance. Bring your enthusiasm, bring your energy, and join us for an evening of hoops, laughter, and building bonds with some of our remarkable local heroes of the Brighton Police Department. The event is free, but please do register to help us plan for a great event for all, and full details are online.
I still don't think the chief answered whether he's playing point guard or
I'll
what.
be there. I'll be there.
He'll be there. And no doubt rivaling Caitlin Clark. The Brickyard Solar Eclipse Bunny Trail event is now open, but hurry! It hops away until next year on Friday, April 12th. So hop along with us for our springtime solar eclipse themed bunny scavenger hunt along the Brickyard Trail. Again, details are available online. Brighton Summer Camp registration. The Brighton resident registration has begun for the camp. Spaces are filled again on a first come, first served basis. So register today to secure your spot. Brighton non-resident registration for summer camps will begin on Tuesday, May 14th at 9 a.m. Our Brighton Seniors Lunches Out and About continues, so check out our community calendar and join us for lunch out and about in the community. The locations change, but we always have a good time with friends enjoying food and sometimes lively entertainment. Again, full details are online, and you can sign up for our monthly newsletter to stay up to date with all the fun things that are happening with the Brighton Seniors. Our Arbor Day tree planting event will be on Saturday, April 27th from 9 to 11 a.m. at the First Baptist Church, 175 Allens Creek Road. The Brighton community is invited to the annual tree planting event at Buckland Park. All ages are welcome, but children must be accompanied by an adult. You may register online again, and I will say the website this time. It's www.townofbrighton.org/rec, REC. Our Drug Enforcement Agency pharmaceutical take-back event will be at the Town of Brighton Public Safety Wing parking lot at 2300 Elmwood Avenue Also on Saturday, April 27th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. The Brighton Clean Sweep returns to Brighton Town Hall, 2300 Elmwood Avenue on Saturday, May 18th, from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And the semi-annual electronics recycling and secure document shredding event will take place at the Brighton Highway Department parking lot, 1941 Elmwood Avenue, on Saturday, June 1st, from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. The next meeting of the Community Services Committee will be next Wednesday, April 17th, at 9:30 a.m. or immediately following our Finance and Administrative Services Committee meeting at the Brighton Recreation Center multipurpose room. Please access the Recreation Department through the Winton Road entrance, and as always, members of the public are invited and encouraged to attend. That's all I have.
Thanks, Robin. Nate, Finance.
Bill, everything I have for finance is on today's agenda, so I'll just move us right along.
All right, thank you. Public Safety.
Public Safety met yesterday. We seem to have a bit of a problem with the formal minutes, but working off of the agenda, we did have a discussion of the Eclipse event, which I agree was excellent. And also the police performance there was without difficulty. It was not the traffic jam we anticipated, but I think through the good work of the department, we avoided all of that. We did discuss the proposed crosswalk policy adoption in response to requests for crosswalks on Highland Avenue and Pelham, Highland Avenue at Grosvenor, Pelham, and Council Rock. And that now has been circulated to the board, and I think we're in the final stages of adopting that crosswalk policy so we can act on those requests. Also, we got a report back from the commissioner that the traffic signal request at North Landing and Blossom Roads and the crosswalk on Penfield Road was discussed with the New York State Department of Transportation, and it was declined. County, excuse me. Did I say state? Excuse me. The Department of Transportation, that it was declined. We also had a presentation by the County Impact Program, which is putting up naloxone cabinets for distribution at various places around the county. They have, I believe they said some 1,000 cabinets out approximately. But we've approached them and asked if they can have more of them installed in the town, and we're well on our way to getting those implemented, which will be available to the public and available on an emergency basis as well. And they'll both be inside the buildings and outside, and the public will be free to gain access to those. Also, the police department gave us a report on their activities with Operation Safe Stop coming up on the 25th. It's an education enforcement program to create awareness about the dangers of passing stopped school buses. They also reiterated that the April 27th DEA prescription take-back event will occur at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. alongside the Public Safety Wing. And they also discussed the numerous resources that went into responding to the kidnapping case. And they're still gathering documents and evidence to ensure all discovery demands are being met. They also reported that, unfortunately, with the change in the weather and so forth, car thefts are ticking up, mainly on the west side of town. And they'll be doing some community outreach. Again, those seem to be focused on Kias and Hyundais as well. They also reported, which is a troubling report, on overdoses. Year to date, through March 19th, there have been 26 overdoses in the town, 5 of which have been fatal. This is obviously a very tragic situation, and that's in part why we're responding with the access to naloxone. The other departments did report on their calls year to date, and there's nothing extraordinary in that regard. Our next meeting will be May 14th at 8 o'clock in the morning here in Town Hall Auditorium.
Thanks, Chris. Finally, Christine, Public Works.
Public Works Met yesterday morning after public safety. There was a lot on the agenda. I'll do my best to be as concise as possible tonight. During our open forum, which we make available at every Public Works meeting, resident with an interest in adding sidewalks to the west side of Clover Street from Babcock Drive to Esplanade attended to continue the discussion about the possibility of that addition to our sidewalk network. In follow-up, the supervisor noted that he had a discussion about this and in general about sidewalks in Monroe County in the context of accessing the recently created county sidewalk fund. We learned that there's no specific timeline for the use of the sidewalk fund and that this request was the first anyone had asked in relation to a timetable. If a timetable could be expedited, and the supervisor will continue on the access to that funding.
And I, in fact, traded calls, tagged the county executive's office is it at the moment.
Excellent.
We traded calls today. They're very responsive as always.
Very good. In a new matter, there was a discussion of the Berman Farms land swap. And Peter Vars of BME Associates presented a proposed land swap that will facilitate the redevelopment of the Berman Farms paper subdivision. And Grove Underhill Properties is the developer. They already own 7.11 acres of the remaining lots, and the town of Brighton owns 3.14 acres of those lots. The proposal calls for accepting 1.43 acres in exchange for 1.8 acres to facilitate having an aggregated property that can be re-subdivided and developed efficiently. Benefits and complications were discussed regarding consolidating the town's holdings and the potential for facilitating a connection to the Highland Crossing Trail. The next step is not clearly defined yet, but a referral to the town, the attorney to the town for clarification of the process has been made, and we'll be learning more as the project progresses. Back again to county sidewalk fund applications. DPW staff learned that the county administration is finalizing a policy and application process for that $10 million sidewalk fund, and the county will be distributing information to the towns shortly.
Today.
Excellent. That really was. You've had really good turnaround.
Not me.
Between the two of you, this is good. So we now know the process, and we have some priorities.
We still have some questions, which is why I played telephone tag with the county executive's office today.
That game of tag
But they'll
going
be
until we
helpful.
have answers. Excellent. In a concerning circumstance, the New York State budget currently proposes, the proposed budget proposes cuts to the NYSERDA CEC funding. Councilmember Wilt brought it to the attention to the committee and proposed submitting a letter that would react against the resulting cuts to the CEC program budget. We support the other programs that the state intends to help with this change. However, it's been a little bit of a moving goalpost for the town of Brighton. So our president agreed that we should oppose the budget cuts, and a letter is completed perhaps by now. 24-hour turnaround.
I have not seen a final letter, but it will go out tomorrow.
Good. Thank you for the speedy work on that. More in sidewalks. A sidewalk easement is needed at the Brighton Volunteer Ambulance site in order to complete the sidewalk network at the southwest corner of Westfall Road and Winton Road. A portion of the sidewalk will be on the Volunteer Ambulance site, requiring an easement. Construction is related to the previous incentive zoning approval for the Jewish Senior Living Facility, which we learned more about tonight. Approval for the easement will be moved to the town board for action. Not on tonight's agenda, however. We also learned FEMA mandated local code updates. Our town engineer, Ken Hurley, thank you, introduced the topic to the committee, gave us an update on FEMA's flood boundary maps that cover the town of Brighton. FEMA has mandated that these undated maps be adopted via local law by the end of July. And Mr. Hurley is updating the FEMA provided local law template, and the attorney to the town is currently reviewing recommended procedures for the town to review the edits to the template and forward it to the state DEC for review and approval prior to formal adoption. So a lot of hard work going into that to keep up with the changes in our floodplains. We had, regarding the request from the National Grid to access town-owned property to complete survey and testing adjacent to the Lehigh Valley Trail, Commissioner Sprague reported that he communicated with National Grid about potential disruption of public access to the trail. He's confident that based on their response, that work will have minimal impact. We have a town hall. We had a town hall renovation project update, and again, Town Engineer Hurley provided us with a report. The consultant agreement for the project is up for approval tonight, and asbestos abatement design consultants agreement is also up for approval this evening. And this morning there was the first of a standard biweekly status review meeting and the first interior finishes subcommittee meeting. So we're getting, the action is really starting to move along on the much needed renovation process.
But it's a handful. I mean, there is a lot to do, and we're really working very hard to try to keep up with the schedule. The INEX architect team has been phenomenal, and we're going to continue to sort of quicken the pace.
Yeah, and the thoughtful consideration prior to this point has made it possible to really take off at top speed. In county project updates, there was a pre-construction meeting scheduled for today on the Brighton Henrietta Town Line Road and Winton Road preventative maintenance project. I imagine we will have further update on that project at next month's meeting. State projects, the Monroe Avenue corridor improvements. The committee is requesting that state DOT meet with the town to provide input so that we can provide input to the state on the proposed design, and that is a top priority on such a significant corridor in town. The other significant commercial corridor that will be getting attention from the state DOT is the West Henrietta Road corridor. The design effort is moving forward at the state level. Town has received requests for record map information, and there is an early stakeholders input meeting scheduled for tomorrow. In town projects, the notable matters are the Complete Streets policy, which is under review currently by the supervisor and the attorney to the town, and we anticipate seeing that finalized soon. And the proposed bike boulevard from Oakdale Drive at the city line through to Avalon Drive at Westfall, where it connects with the Winter Market, that'll be formalized shortly, and it requires a little bit of coordination with the city of Rochester because of the northern terminus of Oakdale Drive being in the city. We are expanding our bicycle network, making it easier to get around town without conflict between bikes and other vehicles. And last, we reviewed trees that had been recommended for removal and replacement by the Tree Council, and the list of the significant trees will be before the board shortly. But not on, as I see, not on tonight's agenda. And that is all. So the Public Works Committee next meets on May 14th at 9 a.m.
Thank you, Christine. New business 8, reading and approval of claims.
Earlier today, I reviewed claims totaling $825,237.40. Some notable claims include the payment for the drilling and testing of the geothermal test well at Town Hall and a 2024 Mack Granite plow truck. Bill, the claims all appear to be in order, and I move for them to be approved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner? Aye. Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Christine.
The next matter seeks to authorize the supervisor to award a bid contract to Casella for dumpster and recycling services at various town-owned locations. I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second.
It is various town locations, and it is a change with Casella. But the details of it are there attached to the communication from Chad Roscoe. Any other questions? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Christine, why don't you do the next one, too?
Yes, the next matter seeks to authorize the supervisor to enter into an agreement with InX Architecture for design and construction administration services associated with Phase 2 of the Brighton Town Hall renovation project in an amount not to exceed $820,647, and to execute any necessary change orders subject to certain limitations. I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second.
This covers not only, these are a series of design-related contracts. InX Architecture, our primary design consultant, will be providing architectural services at a cost estimated to be $235,000. The other design services will be paid to other subcontractors of InX at a total cost of $585,000 approximately. That'll add up to $820,000. We had a discussion about the 10% change order maximum, which is clarified that it is on a contract-by-contract basis. So, for example, although the overall is about $820,000, and that would allow approximately an $82,000 10% aggregate change order, if we just looked at the InX prime contract at $235,000, their contract could not be increased by more than $23,500 or so. So each of those contracts has its own. And if there are unforeseen, and of course we all know in construction projects there can be unforeseen changes, but if for any of those contracts they exceed 10%, it'll have to come back to the board. Any other questions? Yeah, Ken.
Just for clarification,
Yeah.
I believe the contract is intended to be $800,000 plus to InX.
Correct.
They will sub-consultant.
That's correct.
Sub-consultants have provided their estimates of work. So what we will do is, as we get in any change orders, we'll internally track those change orders and compare them to the quoted sub-consulting work.
Sub-consultant by sub-consultant, yeah. And that's the key. That's the key we wanted to be clear about. Thanks. If there's nothing further, Christine, you made the motion. Robin seconded. Thank you. Further discussion, anybody? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner? Aye. Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Chris?
Bill, the next item is...
Actually, let me have Robin do that one. I'm going to have you do the last one. I got them backwards there.
No worries. Next matter seeks to authorize the supervisor to enter into an agreement with Lou Engineers for abatement design for asbestos removal associated with Phase 2 of the Brighton Town Hall renovation project in an amount not to exceed $18,145, and to execute any necessary change orders in an amount not to exceed 10% of the total award. I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
Who did we hear first?
We'll give it to Nate.
All right. Asbestos. Obviously, we all hate to hear that word, but this is an old building. It has asbestos in it. We knew as we would proceed, particularly since we were focused on the HVAC, that during the 50s, that's what they wrapped stuff in and everything else. So this contract, which is being treated and acted upon separately from the other contracts, is with Lou Engineers. It's for design of the abatement component of the project. That will enable us then to go out to bid on the asbestos abatement, which will be a significant part of this very significant project. For that design work, we're proposing to enter into Lou Engineers with, again, a 10% change order max. Jim or Ken, anything else to add to that? All right. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye.
Bill, the next item is to amend the 2024 budget to reflect the use of granite proceeds for the purchase of furniture for the Police Records Department. I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second?
And Chief, what is granite?
Granite was part of the drug task force that we belonged to, which ended about 4 years ago. The acronym is Greater Rochester Area Narcotics Enforcement Team. But we are no longer with that. We're with the Drug Enforcement Administration now.
But these are still
These
our
still
share of proceeds.
The funds come in several years sometimes after the proceeds, and it goes through all the adjudication process in the courts. So it takes several years for the funds to come in.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comments? Hearing none. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Matters of the supervisor. Robin, you already talked about the eclipse, so I'll just add a couple of things. The Shine Band was great. I keep getting positive feedback on them. Everybody loved Shine. We couldn't have, you thanked all of our internal folks, and they did a phenomenal job. But our sponsors were also a big part of the day. Roxanne Stavropoulos of RE/MAX, our gold sponsor. Elmwood Dental, our silver sponsor. Brighton Securities was our bronze sponsor. We also got great cooperation both from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on Westfall Road, right across from the park. They made their parking field of about 300 spaces available to us. We had about 3,000 people, we estimate, there at the festivities, and many of them walked, some of them rode bikes, some of them carpooled, but it was a good thing that we had a lot of parking capabilities. So thank you to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and also to Temple Brith Kodesh. We knew a lot of people wanted to walk across, and the Brickyard Trail is a great way to do it, and they made their lot available for people to park there and then walk across on the Brickyard Trail. So thank you to everybody. I think the only mistake we made is that we didn't have Scott Hetzko or one of the other weather people on our committee. We will be passing our files on to the next eclipse committee that will be handling the next eclipse in, I believe, 2144 or something like that. So I'm sure they won't make that mistake a second time. Just one last thing. We are we're recycling eclipse glasses. We collected hundreds of them at the park after the eclipse had passed. We continue to collect them. We have a box out here in the lobby. So for those of you at home that are wondering what to do with your glasses, feel free to bring them here until April 19th. And they will be sent down with an organization that is providing eclipse glasses for an eclipse later this year in South America. So they should be put to good use. But again, if you have them and want to give them away, the box is right here in the lobby. Thank you to our intrepid ASL interpreters, Heather and Allie, another long night. Finally, Eid Mubarak. Eid Mubarak to our Muslim community who celebrated Eid al-Fitr today. We wish you joy. We wish your households happiness and good cheer. Matters of the attorney to the town.
Thank you, Supervisor. No matters to report, but would request an executive session to discuss 2 matters leading to the appointment of particular persons.
Sounds good. Thank you. Matters of the clerk?
Nothing this evening.
Thank you. Other town board matters? And hearing none, can I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss the employment of particular people?
Supervisor, I move that we go into executive session to discuss the employment of particular persons.
Second.
Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman?
Aye.
Supervisor Malley?
Aye. I do not anticipate coming back out into open session after our executive session, so our next town board meeting will be Wednesday, April 24th, of course, right here at 7 o'clock. Thank you, everybody, and have a great evening.